Okay, let's unpack this. You know that feeling, right?
Hmm.
You're stuck waiting somewhere. Maybe it's a slow line, sitting on a delayed train, and there's that brief lull, that empty space.
Yeah,
What's the first thing you do? Instinctively, almost, your hand reaches for your phone.
right. That immediate reflex.
We've been conditioned, I think, to see boredom, that state of just doing nothing, as this, like, uncomfortable void.
Something to fill immediately.
Exactly, something we have to escape.
And that common reaction is precisely the jumping off point for this deep dive.
Okay.
We've been digging into some really fascinating sources, articles, and research that explore the surprising, almost counterintuitive power of boredom.
Mm-hmm.
They fundamentally challenge that reflex,
Yeah.
that need to grab a distraction.
So what if that moment you dread isn't actually a void?
What if it isn't a void to be filled, but maybe a doorway?
A doorway. Okay, a doorway to what? That's what we're here to figure out.
That's the mission.
Our mission is to understand why allowing yourself to be bored, to like intentionally embrace doing less, why that might actually be one of the most profoundly productive things you can do.
Productive for your brain, for your creativity.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into the surprising science, what happens in your mind when you're bored.
And how it's fundamentally linked to our deepest creative insights, problem-solving abilities.
Right. And why our modern world seems almost perfectly designed to prevent it happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And crucially, practical ways you can actually start harnessing this power yourself.
Okay, good. So as we explore this, maybe think about your own habits. You, listening.
Yeah, definitely. When faced with a quiet moment, does that reflex action take over?
Or have you ever noticed something interesting emerge when you just, let yourself sit with it?
Food for thought.
So let's start with the brain science, because this is where it gets really, really interesting.
It really does.
When you're not actively engaged with, say, external stimuli, your phone or whatever, your brain isn't just idle, is it? It shifts into a powerful, different gear.
Exactly. That's the key.
Yeah.
When the external world quiets down, the brain activates what neuroscientists call the default mode network, the DMN.
The DMN, okay.
Think of this as like the brain's internal processing system. It becomes highly active when you're not focusing on a specific task.
So when you're daydreaming, mind wandering.
Precisely. Or simply letting your thoughts roam free. That's the DMN at work.
Ah, the DMN. So this is the network behind those classic aha moments, like when an idea just suddenly pops into your head in the shower.
That's exactly it. Our sources really highlight that this network is, well, it's the engine connected to creativity, introspection, even synthesizing complex ideas or planning for the future. It allows your mind to wander freely, making unexpected connections.
Connections between things that don't normally seem related.
Yes, between disparate pieces of information and without the usual constraints of focused, goal-oriented thinking.
So the state we often feel guilty about, mind wandering, not being productive in that typical sense, is actually the brain's default mode for making deep connections, for having breakthroughs.
Yes.
That feels completely backwards to how we're usually taught to think.
It absolutely is counterintuitive, but the research is clear on this. Boredom can act as a trigger.
A trigger for the DMN.
Yeah, a necessary precursor,
Yeah.
sometimes, for tapping into this creative potential. It sort of relaxes the brain's usual filters.
Okay.
It gives your thoughts the space they need to bump into each other in novel ways. This is why you often hear about creative people getting their best ideas doing mundane tasks.
Like washing dishes, going for a walk.
Staring out a window. Things where their minds aren't intensely focused on solving the problem right that second.
Right, okay. But it's not just about random creative sparks either, is it? The sources link it directly to problem solving as well.
That's right. There was a notable study, I think back in 2013. It showed that a small dose of boredom can actually prime the brain to perform better on certain types of thinking tasks. Convergent thinking tasks.
Convergent thinking, that's like finding the single best solution.
Exactly. Finding the optimal solution to a problem. By letting your mind initially wander without structure.
Why?
You might stumble upon angles or solutions you wouldn't have found by just staring intently at the problem from the get-go.
So boredom isn't just passively enduring empty time. It's actively preparing your brain for deeper cognitive work, for creative leaps.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. Active preparation.
But the benefits go even further than just creativity and problem solving, based on what our sources tell us.
They do. Boredom can actually serve as a powerful trigger for motivation.
Motivation? How so?
Well, when you're feeling restless or bored, It's often the brain signaling a need for stimulation or change.
Ah, okay.
Pushes you towards seeking new experiences or engaging in those creative outlets we just mentioned. It's like the brain saying, okay, this isn't quite right. What's next?
It's like a natural nudge towards seeking engagement then.
Exactly, a nudge. And crucially, it also offers mental restoration.
Restoration, like
Right.
recharging.
Yes, our brains aren't really meant to be on and intensely focused all the time.
Right. That sounds exhausting.
It is. Periods of boredom allow the brain to revert to the DMN, which, while active, uses energy differently. It allows for a kind of mental reset,
Think of it as essential downtime for processing and recharging.
essential downtime.
Yeah.
Precisely.
And then there's the profound aspect of self-reflection.
This is perhaps one of the most valuable benefits, but often the most overlooked, I think,
Why is that?
because boredom creates the quiet space necessary for introspection. It's really hard to process your emotions, understand your own motivations.
Or even just check in with how you're feeling.
Exactly. If your mind is constantly occupied with external input, emails, notifications, news,
You don't get that chance.
you don't. These moments are vital for self-awareness, for personal growth.
It really does sound like boredom is less about nothing happening out there.
And more about allowing the brain the necessary internal space to process, connect ideas, recharge in ways that intense focus actually prevents.
That's a great summary. It's about internal space. Which leads us straight to the big question.
If this state is so beneficial,
Why is it so incredibly difficult for us, especially now in the modern world, to actually allow ourselves to experience it?
the constant battle against the dopamine trap. Our sources really hammer this home.
They really do. We live in a world just saturated with instant, endless stimulation.
Everywhere you look.
Absolutely. Our reward system in the brain, the dopamine network, it's constantly being pinged by our devices, our digital environments.
Scrolling social media, the short videos.
Notifications, multitasking. They provide these quick, small hits of dopamine that are incredibly addictive.
Right.
And they train our brains to crave constant novelty, constant external validation.
Yet every time we give in to that reflex, every time we reach for the distraction when there's a lull,
What happens to that valuable default mode network? Yeah, what happened?
we suppress it. We literally prevent that mind wandering, that introspection, that deep connection making from happening.
Wow.
We become conditioned to feel uncomfortable, genuinely uncomfortable, with the absence of immediate stimulation. It's like we're losing the capacity to tolerate boredom.
Which must make it harder to engage with anything that requires sustained attention.
Definitely. Or deeper cognitive effort.
Like reading a complex article, working on a challenging problem.
Or truly engaging in a creative project that takes time and focus.
It feels like our brains are being rewired for constant surface level switching.
Yeah.
Just jumping from one thing to the next.
And what's fascinating is the distinction our sources draw between those superficial dopamine triggers
Okay.
and the good ones, the ones associated with deeper engagement.
Like what?
Well, activities like unstructured thinking, reading something long form, engaging in genuinely creative work. They trigger dopamine too, but in a different way. It's linked to sustained focus and actually encourages the very DMN activity we're talking about. But we're often defaulting to the easy, quick hits instead.
Right. Okay, so we understand that boredom has this incredible, maybe hidden power, and that our modern environment is actively making it harder to access. So the crucial part now is, how do we actually put this into practice?
How do we fight back, basically?
How do we move from avoiding boredom to actually harnessing it?
Well, our sources offer some practical, actionable steps. One simple but potentially powerful idea is what they call the boredom challenge.
The boredom challenge. Okay, tell me everything. Sounds intriguing.
It's deceptively simple. Set a timer for just 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
And commit to doing absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
No phone, no TV, no book, no looking at screens, not even listening to music, or, well, this deep dive right now.
Okay, fair enough. Just sit or walk.
Just sit or walk and just be with your thoughts, whatever comes up.
10 minutes of pure, unstructured stillness. For many people, myself included sometimes, that sounds genuinely terrifying.
It likely will feel uncomfortable at first because we've lost the habit, we've lost the tolerance for it.
Right.
But according to the sources, that initial discomfort is exactly the barrier you need to push through. That's where the mind starts to settle, and those deeper thoughts, those DMN stirrings, begin to emerge. It's about deliberately rebuilding that tolerance.
And it directly tackles that modern stimulation overload we were just talking about.
It does. Another strategy mentioned quite a bit is some form of digital detox.
Okay, but maybe not a full week off-grid for everyone.
No, no, not necessarily. Look for small, intentional ways to reduce the constant flow of instant gratification.
Like what?
Simple commitments, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Having meals without phones at the table, taking a silent walk outside without headphones,
Mm-hmm.
or designating specific periods, even just an hour in the evening, or maybe a few hours on a weekend is screen-free time.
These actions reduce the constant stream of those easy dopamine hits.
Exactly. Allowing your mind the chance to quiet down and wander naturally.
So instead of automatically filling every tiny empty pocket of time with a quick digital fix.
You deliberately create empty pockets of time.
Yeah.
Or at least you don't automatically fill the ones that appear.
Right. And then instead of reaching for that easy distraction when a moment of boredom arises, you consciously choose to use it as that gateway you mentioned.
Use it as a gateway. Maybe those 5 minutes waiting for the kettle to boil aren't for scrolling Instagram.
Okay.
Maybe they're for letting your mind drift or jotting down a couple of thoughts in a notebook or just observing your surroundings without judgment.
It's reframing that dead time as what? Incubation time?
Incubation time. I like that, yeah.
And this isn't just some modern psychological trick, is it? History seems full of examples of people who intuitively understood this.
Absolutely. The sources point this out too. Think of Einstein. His famous breakthroughs often came during long, solitary walks.
Right.
J.K. Rowling famously conceived the core idea for Harry Potter while stuck on a delayed train journey,
Just staring out the window.
just staring out the window. And Steve Jobs was known to be a proponent of silent retreats to clear his mind and find focus and vision.
These weren't people frantically checking emails or scrolling feeds during those moments.
Not at all. They were actively, or sometimes passively, allowing their minds the space to breathe, to connect ideas, to incubate profound thoughts.
Their experiences really underscore the central point from our sources then.
Which is,
That boredom, when approached intentionally, is not wasted time. It's not failure.
it can be the fertile ground from which our most significant ideas, our deepest self-understanding, maybe even our clearest sense of purpose can emerge.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, the core message seems really powerful and clear.
What stands out for you?
That boredom, that state we've been trained to avoid at all costs, it's not the enemy.
Not at all. It's a powerful state. It activates crucial brain networks like the DMN,
It's a state that offers incredibly valuable benefits, fueling creativity,
enhancing problem solving,
boosting motivation,
providing essential mental restoration.
and enabling vital self-reflection.
All pretty important things.
Definitely. And while our modern world's constant stimulation, that dopamine trap, makes tolerating boredom harder than ever.
It's precisely because of this that consciously embracing moments of doing nothing becomes even more critical.
Critical for our well-being, for our cognitive function.
Absolutely. And implementing simple, practical steps like that 10-minute boredom challenge.
Or intentionally creating small digital detox periods.
Choosing to use moments of quiet for reflection instead of distraction. These can truly help you reclaim and harness this overlooked power.
Okay, so here's something to really mull over as you go about your week. A final thought.
Let's hear it.
If constant busyness and external stimulation are actually preventing the mind wandering and deep processing necessary for those aha moments, for genuine self-insight, what small intentional space could you create in your routine specifically for doing nothing?
Just a small space.
And what unexpected idea, solution, or maybe understanding might be waiting there for you to discover?